Hello, today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Tisbury Audio passive preamp. Now, I thought I'd give a passive preamp a go. It's going to be replacing this unit, which I've had since 2016 when I finished building it, and they did an upgrade to it in 2017. Don't know if you can see in there, but I usually date them inside when I've completed them. And again, it's volume, selector and a balance switch. This has a volume and selector, so missing the balance switch, which I've never actually used since I've had the thing. It stays permanently in the middle, so that's not going to be an issue. Similarly, 3 inputs, 2 outputs, which is the same as the Tisbury has 3 inputs, 2 outputs. So the only thing it's missing is all the faff inside. I'm going to be substituting this in shortly. What can we say about the unit? I have to say that when I initially unwrapped the package, my initial response to the unit was of disappointment. I don't think it's worth the £179 it sells for. The unit itself is substantially lightweight. I mean, if you are into using heavy duty cables, substantial cables, then this thing's going to be floating around. It is really light. On the front, and again, I don't know if you can see that, but this knob is not centrally located in the cutout. The volume knob is better so, but still not by much. Also, the screen printing on the back is barely legible. Much better on the underside. You can clearly see what that is saying. But I say on the back, when I first unwrapped it, I thought there was no printing on there at all. You have to struggle to get it absolutely in the right light to see anything at all on the back. Not that there's a great deal of information. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. I think that says... No, I can't even see it now. In Tisbury Audio, made in England. Mini passive preamp. No, I can't actually read that. And the lighting is quite bright in here. So that was a disappointment. The other thing you get with the unit is a small glorified toothpick to alter the dip switches, which are inside these receptacles here. So as I say, I don't think particularly good value for money. The knobs themselves also feel very cheap, unlike say these, which I use on my preamp build, which are considerably weightier and better machined. But the proof will be in the pudding, as I say, and we'll plug this in. We'll also try and see what it's like with long cable runs. A lot of people tell you can't use long cables on passive preamps. On Tisbury's website, they say you can use up to 5 meters. So I happen to have some 4.75 meter cables. They are Belden 1505F video brilliance cables. So the whole length of that has under 300 picofarads for the whole 4.75 meters. I think the specification is 15 picofarads per foot. So that shouldn't be give it any undue capacitance issues. So we'll be substituting my Bottlehead Smash Up or Smash preamp with a Smash Up upgrade for the dinky little Tisbury Audio passive preamp. They do offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and at the end of it I'll see if I'll be acting upon that. I have a sneaking suspicion that I indeed might be, but we'll see. We'll see how it performs in situ. So let's get on and give that a test, and I'll be back in a short while. Welcome to the second part of the Tisbury passive preamp review. Now, I have to say that the Tisbury Audio passive preamp has been returned for a refund, and the refund process was non-dramatic. Obviously, the unit you return must be in pristine condition the way you receive it, so keep the packaging and everything. So I bundled it back up, sent it back, and duly received a refund for it. Now, I have to say that the reason it went back was not for sound quality reasons per se. And if I was looking for a small format passive preamp and I only used digital sources, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with it at all. However, my issue was that using my various low output cartridges in my turntable, I had to nearly run it at full volume, for want of a better word. Nothing really happens until you get nearly halfway up on my system. Now, I should say that my power amps are direct heated to A3 triodes, so they pump out a magnificently sweet 3.5 watts. My speakers are over 100 dB for 1 watt at 1 meter sensitivity, so they can go with those 3.5 watts deafeningly loud. And with my normal Bottlehead Smash Up preamp, I use 14 dB attenuators on the inputs to the power amps because the volume is too hair trigger. Otherwise, I get very little movement on it before it becomes deafeningly loud. And of course, I did remove these when I was using the passive preamp. But when I switched from digital to my favourite phono cartridges, the Autophon SPU, very low output, either using a step-up transformer with my Bottlehead Seduction phono preamp, or direct into the Project Phonobox S3B, the balanced unit that I recently had a look at. I still had to run those two at nearly full pelt on the volume control before I got what I would consider a realistic listening level, which meant if I should want to really rock out, it wasn't possible with the passive. However, with digital sources, which with a much more healthy output, there was no issue whatsoever. I also felt that there was no downside to using it. Remember that the preamp it was replacing, quite chunky valve unit, has a volume control and a selector switch and a balance control. The balance control mainly stays in the middle, so exactly the same controls. It also has 3 inputs like the Tisbury and 2 outputs just like the Tisbury. And I had it in the system for just over a week, and in that period I felt no loss of quality or detail. At the same time, I also didn't feel there was any substantial gain in transparency or any other factor you would like to mention. It was just a very clean, good sounding preamplifier. And to address the issue that most people say that you can't use long cables. Now, there's another video I saw on YouTube talking about this item where the reviewer was quite disappointed initially, and then he was told that he shouldn't be using long cable runs, so he reduced them down and found there was a much better result. These were the cables I tried. These are 4.75 meters. As I said before, they are Belden 1505F Video Brilliance cables, and they are nothing special. They are just good professional quality cables. And there was absolutely no curtailing of top end detail. There was no loss of volume. There was no difference I could discern between using those and a 1 meter cable run. And that was after 15 or so swaps of the cables, listening to the same pieces of music over and over again. I'd say no discernible difference from my point of view. So, as Tisbury say, you can use up to 5 meters of cable. The only thing I will say is, based on the other person's review, perhaps it does make a difference on exactly how good that cable is. As I say, these are nothing boutique. They are just ordinary industry standard, professional standard quality cables, and they seem perfect for the job. So, no loss of sound quality, no gain really in sound quality. I mean, I find that this essentially means that perhaps my Bottlehead preamp is essentially quite neutral in its own state. So the main reason it was returned was I didn't think it was worth the money. I thought it was not worth £179. And I couldn't use it with my phono stages and my favourite low output cartridges. It was better with higher output cartridges, but certainly not with 2 of the cartridges that I habitually use. So essentially, nothing wrong with the unit, nothing wrong with the sound quality. If you go back to the earlier part of this, where I'm talking about the fact that the screen printing on the back is barely legible, a negative. The one of the knobs wasn't fully centered in the cutout in the front panel, another negative. And as I say, I just don't think it was worth the £179 asking price, so it was returned. But it did make me realise that passive preamps are a viable option, especially if you are using high output digital sources. So from my perspective, it was a bit of a downer, but it was certainly an interesting time listening to it. And as I say, I felt that I wasn't losing anything out to the passive preamp apart from the ability to drive the volume to higher levels than I could get, especially on the phono side. So that's it. The takeaway should be that if you want that small form factor and you want something that is essentially neutral, then it might be worth looking at the Tisbury Audio Passive Pre. I did have a look around on the net for other passive pre's, and to be honest, there didn't seem to be anything in a similar price range. Everything was vastly more expensive. Now, I myself have all the bits and pieces in my stash of components to actually make a passive preamp. I've got a 30 position volume control, 30 position step volume control using 1% resistors. I've got high quality selector switch. I've got loads of chassis mounting phono sockets. So the only thing I need is the willingness to put it into a box and actually spend the time and effort wiring it up, which may be something I'll look at a later stage if I want to reinvestigate using a passive preamp. Anyway, thank you for listening and watching, and I'll see you again with something else. Goodbye.